Alright, we're back again. This time we're going to look at how we use Milner to find certain types of articles. So in our previous search, we looked at just a quick search. This time we're going to be focusing on how to find scholarly articles, the types of articles that you will definitely need, not only for English 145, but for future coursework. So first off, today's unit, we're looking at how Twitter works. We're looking at the case of Trayvon Martin and George Zimmerman. And so what we're going to do is we're going to type those search keywords in again. Okay. And this is again going to give us a good number of search results. Now let's take a look here what we have. We have, first page has 50 results from 10,000 results. All right, they're sorted by relevance. Page options, that's not going to help us much. How are we going to sort through 10,000 articles? What we're going to do is we're going to start over here on the left-hand side. When you scroll down a little bit, you'll notice there's this button for Limit To. Now, something I do, it's a bit of a cheater's approach. If you click Full Text, all right, notice we're down to 3,780 articles. All of the articles that are now listed have the full text available online right here from the Milner website. Now, the reason I call this a bit of a cheater's approach is because you've eliminated, in this case, we've eliminated about 2/3 of the available resources on a fairly arbitrary aspect, whether or not Milner has them online. For English 145, I think this is okay. If you were doing, say, a higher level course, if you were in graduate school, I would not recommend limiting your source in this way, as you get deeper into your research. At some point, you should understand your research well enough that it's worth hunting down a source. It's worth ordering it over iShare. Now, for the purposes of English 145, especially an 8-week summer course, it may not be worth it trying to order through iShare. Alright, now, other things to limit to: scholarly, peer-reviewed, Milner and iShare catalogs only. Now, if you are willing to do a little extra work to find your sources, it makes sense to do the limit to Milner and iShare catalogs only, because those are the sources that you are going to be able to track down through Milner. If you can't track them down through Milner, then there might not be much point in finding the source through Milner unless you're going to start Googling it, which we will talk about in another video. So let's go ahead and limit it to scholarly peer-reviewed articles, and let's see what happens. Alright, right away you'll notice that all of the, all of these little icons on the left side are saying academic journal. Alright. Now, if we go back and we uncheck that box again, you'll notice that many of the articles we find are periodicals. Alright. Here's an academic journal, which we talked about in the previous video, the Black Lives Matter Kitchen Talk. Alright. But a lot of periodicals, newspapers, periodical, news, periodical. With a topic such as George Zimmerman, Trayvon Martin, and Twitter, this is a very popular topic, very much in the national discourse. And so because of that, there are a lot of texts out there. And so if you want to get to the scholarly text, you really do have to check this box. Now you'll notice that with our search term, we are now down to 13 scholarly sources with a full text available. Alright, since there's only 13 of them, very easy to go through and look pretty closely at each one. Now in a case like this, I would say, maybe full text maybe this full text box is limiting our search too much. So I'm going to uncheck that real quick. We're up to 22 articles. Alright, so for these search terms, we've got 22 articles. 13 of them, we have the full text right here. Alright, so that's for a course like English 145, I would say that that's generally pretty good if you are the only one working on that project. Alright, since but let's since all of you in the course are going to be doing these very similar search terms, what I would say, if there's only 22 sources or 13 sources if we're going with the online ones, it may well be worth it to go up and switch up your search terms a bit. Alright, so what I'm going to do, let's see, we've got Twitter, Trayvon Martin, George Zimmerman. If you want more sources, you want to use fewer keywords. Alright, so right now, let's what I could do is I could just type in Twitter. Let's see what happens if I type in Twitter for just scholarly articles for which we have full text. Alright, and I'm going to limit this one to full text because look, we've got 89,000 articles. That's a little too many. So let's go down here, limit to full text. It's updating. Oh, 53,000 now. So clearly Twitter is far too broad of a topic. Alright, so let's try to refine this for English 145. Let's try Twitter writing research. Ooh, magic. What's this going to do for us? Oh, we're down to 13,000. Alright, so here we've got evaluation of Twitter users. 10 simple rules for effective online outreach. I'm going to go ahead and let you guys know that this article right here looks really good for your project 2. You may want to look this one up for your reference for project 2. Okay, so Twitter writing research. We have some interesting stuff here, but again, it's not very closely tied to the course. So we really need, either Trayvon Martin or George Zimmerman or both. So what I'm going to do is, well, actually no, what we can do is use a more general approach. So, for example, if we do Twitter writing research, race relations. Let's type that in and see what happens. This should reduce the number of search terms. Okay, so we're down to 2,447. Okay, from the black hand side, Twitter as cultural conversation. I'm going to let you know I've seen this source myself previously. This is exactly the type of source we want to be looking at. This is talking about, it's basically talking about Black Twitter, which is part of what we're looking at this week. Alright, emergent publics, critical. Alright, emergent publics, this is the type of thing I study. It's not clear from this title whether or not Twitter is a big part of it. Alright, so you'll notice that these topics are again very broad. For example, this one, mentoring field directions, a national exploratory study. This appears to have nothing at all to do with what we're doing. Alright. Alright, now here are the art of killing a dream. Quick look at the subjects. We're looking at race relations, racism, mass media, race discrimination. This sounds a lot like what we're looking for. We're trying to find out how does writing change the way people perceive the world. And in this case, this sounds like they're looking at the ways in which writing, you know, causes, changes perceptions on racism. Right. Cultural of racial equivalence. Okay. Now, issue I'm saying here, I don't see Twitter showing up in these sources. Some of the top ones. All right. So again, let's try reprioritizing. Let's put our quotes around Twitter. See what happens. Okay. So this article's still first. That didn't seem to change our search much. So at this point, I'm with these search terms, since they're not turning up what I'm looking for, I'm going to change them up again. Writing research, I'm going to warn you guys, typing in the words writing research is typically not very helpful. And part of the reason why I did that search term in here was so that you could see that typing that term in is not necessarily going to help you find writing research related documents. And the reason is because, so many things involve writing and so many things involve research. If we want them to actually be helpful, we need to move these quotes off of Twitter and put them on writing research. Now, another thing I want to point out, race relations, these two terms here, they are, also extremely common terms. Not very helpful for us individually because so many articles talk about race. So many different fields talk about relations and relationships. So if we want them to be helpful, we need to combine them like this. Now Twitter, I'm going to leave it hanging for a moment, see what happens. Alright, so we're going from 2,419 articles to 3,397. It increased our articles by putting the quotation marks. That I don't understand, but... Alright, so we've got partner teaching. Alright, problem with racial controversies. Mission trips. Alright, so, Ghost in the Global Machine. Looks promising. Okay, so, again, I have led you astray with bad search terms. And this is part of the learning process. So what I'm going to do now is, alright, writing research, race relations. At this point, we need to go to an advanced search. Alright. Advanced searches are nice because they can help you do and, or, and not. Alright, so we know that we're looking at Twitter. That's kind of our big deal that we're looking at. So we have some options. We could put it in all the text, which right off the bat, I'm thinking no. Many articles talk about Twitter. Those articles aren't necessarily helpful for us. So we're going to go down here. I'm thinking Twitter should either be in the title or in the subject terms. And because Twitter is such a big part of what we're talking about, I'm going to go with subject terms. Only because it's possible you would have an article on social media where the Twitter is not in the title, but social media is. Alright, we're going to type in Trayvon Martin. And we're going to leave that as and, because that is our topic. We really need Trayvon Martin in there. Alright. Now, we can go with or, and, well, let's see. Actually, you know what? No, we're going to stick with and. Twitter, Trayvon Martin, George Zimmerman. What you'll notice when we do this search, oh, and we have to do our, what are these? We want Trayvon Martin and George Zimmerman to be subject terms at this moment. So let's see what happens when we search that. Okay, so we're down to 9 articles. That's probably not enough. And you'll notice that we haven't checked these boxes yet over here. So if we do full text scholarly peer reviewed, we're going to drop down from 9 articles to 2. We do scholarly peer reviewed. We've got nothing. Alright, so Trayvon Martin and George Zimmerman, we're going to take it to all text for those 2 terms. Reason being, Twitter is an important subject for us. But Martin and Zimmerman, we really more need them mentioned because we need to make sure that the article is somewhat related to what we're doing. So let's go ahead and do our search. Again, no search terms. Alright. Well, let's take out George Zimmerman. See what we get. Still no search terms. Alright, so Twitter, if we if we move that to all text, let's see what we get. This should open up the search a little bit. Okay, so we're back to our 23 articles from before. Alright, so something I hope you'll notice is that this search term process that we've just been through, it can be rather hit or miss. It can at times be frustrating. But when you do hit a good combination like this, and you do have a solid 23 articles that come up, at that point, what you want to do is you want to go through and look at the articles one by one. Alright, so here, Congressional Black Caucus's social media gap looks good for us. Alright, this article we've seen before doesn't look as helpful. Does anyone care about black women? Now this looks like an interesting article, but may not have Twitter in it at all, as far as I can tell. Okay, racism in the internet. We definitely need this article. Alright, social movements and the digital age. Good. Okay, social media analysis. Good. Oh, this looks like exactly what we're looking for. Friends of Justice. Does social media impact the public perception of the justice system? Definitely selecting no. Alright, so as you can see, we do have some pretty good articles in here. So since we've been over some of these basics, I'm going to go ahead and wrap this up here. This video itself is rather long, so I think I'm going to have this as the long version. I'm going to make a shorter version in a moment, which skips over some of the frustrations. And if you have not already seen that one, that might be the better one for referencing later. Alright. So, signing off.